if you've ever worked out at a gym, there's usually music playing, but most people are ignoring that music and have their headphones on. They're listening to their own jam. One day I walk into the gym and I see this guy and he is jacked. Big guy, huge muscles. I thought, I wonder what he's listening to that is giving him this kind of energy to lift this type of weight. One day I went up to him and I said, hey, I just want to ask you a question. What do you listen to get yourself pumped up in the gym to lift that type of weight that you're lifting? Your muscles are massive. Your arms are bigger than my legs. What are you doing to get this type of energy at the gym every day? And he looked at me, and I'm expecting him to tell me about rock music he's listening to, some type of hard metal. And he said, actually, I listen to podcasts when I'm working out. And I stepped back and I thought, podcast? That pumps you up at the gym to lift heavy is listening to podcasts? But that's what he listened to. When he was on the bench looking like he's pumped up, ready to go, he's listening to a podcast. But it inspired me, and I thought, I'm going to start listening to podcasts. That's a good idea. I began subscribing to different shows, and I noticed something, that this platform of podcasting allowed for these long interviews to take place in a different format than just radio interviews or something you'd see on cable news. This was a long type of style platform of interviews to get really in depth on different topics. Every day I went to the gym, I started listening to podcasts, and I was learning, I was growing, listening to leadership, communication, nutrition, all types of topics. But I noticed something in these podcasts that caught my attention. Often there was one question that the interviewer would ask the person on their show. Who is the most influential person in your life? Who has been the most influential person in your life? And that question got me thinking about, well, who's been one of the most influential people in my life? And immediately I thought about my wife. She has inspired me. You see, back in 2014, I was going to grad school. And right around the time I was going to grad school, my wife, about a month beforehand, we picked up our family, we moved across the country, and she went to the doctor right before I started grad school. She goes in for a routine blood work, gets her blood drawn. A couple weeks later, the doctor calls her and he said, hey, I just want to ask, are you fighting any kind of virus, any flu, anything like that? And she said, not really. And he said, okay, well, let's bring you back in a couple of weeks and have it checked one more time. My wife goes in and gets the blood work done. This is just a routine physical, takes the blood work. Same thing. He calls her and said, there's something elevated in your blood count with platelets in your blood. I think you need to go to this specialist in oncology to get checked out. We go to this specialist and I'm already nervous thinking, why is she going to this specialist? What is going on? This feels serious to me. We go to this oncologist and he says, I want to run tests on you to see if you have this rare blood disease. But before we do that, I need to check to see if you have cancer. And I need to take a bone marrow biopsy. So my wife and I schedule this appointment. We go to the bone marrow biopsy. And at first, they just kind of drilled into her back a little bit to pull out a sample of bone marrow. And I thought, well, that's not too bad. It wasn't too big of a needle. And I don't like needles. I'm the guy that has to get orange juice when I get my blood drawn because I almost pass out. But I thought, that's okay. I'll hold her hand. I'll be all right. This isn't too bad. And then they brought out this needle that was about that long. And then I thought I was going to pass out. My wife's holding my hand. It's okay, babe. Don't pass out on me. She's comforting me. They stick this huge needle in her back and pull out this sample of bone marrow. And they send this off to get tested. The day that I'm walking into my first class, I open the door. The doctor calls my phone. I pick it up. And he said, I got some news for you. Are you okay to talk right now? And I thought, yeah, I can talk. My class had started, but I didn't go in right away. And he said, hey, I just want you to know it's not cancer, but she does have this thing called essential thrombocythemia. And I said, what? And he goes, we call it ET for short. And I thought, that's what I'm going to call it because I can't pronounce this word. He said she is going to have to take this low dose chemo pill probably the rest of her life to keep her platelets down and these symptoms that she's having at bay. That was hard news for me. My wife at that time was 27 years old. We had a little boy, and I didn't know how this was going to impact my life and her life especially. I sat in the bathroom and I cried right before my class. I couldn't even go into my class. I was just crying. Because this woman that had been such an impact in my life, I thought, why is she going through this? I said a prayer, got up, went into my class and tried to focus. It was tough. But this is what I want to leave you with about my wife. My wife has never complained about this. Her faith has grown stronger. She's inspired me with how she smiles every single day. She gets up out of bed, takes care of our kids, never complains. She is my inspiration. And from those podcasts, that one question has inspired me to think about who is the most inspirational person in my life. It's her. And I would leave you with this question. Who has inspired you and why? How has that impacted your life?